Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Once again, we're here at ITV, and my name is Imam Abdul Baqi, and we're going to cover some further information in regards to slavery in the Americas. I want to first read my itinerary and my outline. Number one, we covered the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Islamic Renaissance, and how Islam spread throughout the world and its influences upon various different cultures. Number two, we covered they came before Columbus in the Columbus period. And number three, inshallah, we will be finishing up with 1619, enslavement of the Africans. And number four, we will move towards 1963, the so-called Emancipation Proclamation. Number five, the finding of Islamic prototype movements in America. Number six, Sufi Abdul Hamid and the Civil Rights Movement. Number seven, the Dawah Islam movement in America. Number eight, the transformation of the Nation of Islam. Number five, we will be talking about number nine, we will be talking about, inshallah, immigrants and the Muslims. And also we will finish up, inshallah, with the events of 9/11 and where do we go from here. So I'm going to finish up, alhamdulillah bil alameen, on the issue of 1619, its relevance and its importance. Although England colonists did not invent slavery, and the transition from a handful of bounded Africans laboring to a legalized system of full-blown chattel slavery here in America, 1619 made the beginning of the so-called race-based bondage, which defined the African-American experience, stolen from their land and in turn enslaved in America. We should be reminded that slavery was nothing new. It was not a newfound reality. Matter of fact, in the 15th century, we see that Portugal and Spain was blessed by the Pope, and they divided up the northern and the southern hemisphere amongst Spain and Portugal. And they went forth with slaves. Matter of fact, it said perhaps over 100 million African lives were lost in the transatlantic slave trade. This is reported by our beloved teacher, W.E.B. Du Bois, who wrote a book detailing that over 100 million Africans. So the greatest tragedy in America, we cannot say was the Africans. The greatest tragedy in America was what happened to the Native American. 10,000 years of history wiped out. They came from a population of hundreds of millions down to maybe 10 million today, north and south, totally exterminated. And those that wasn't killed, they were interned on what we call concentration camps, or we call today reservations. So 1619 began what we call chattel slavery. And chattel slavery means that the African was not a human being. He was just like a chicken, a cow, a goat. He was no more than a commodity and anything else. Matter of fact, we come to Sir Francis Drake, and how he in turn raided what we call today Florida, and he took that territory, or he took from that territory numerous amount, some 400, what we call Melungeons, who were Muslims. Some of them, some say 300 was Muslims, and the other percentage was not. But they were Portuguese, they were Turks, they were Spanish, they were Arabs, and the majority of them were Africans. These Melungeons was dropped off at what we call today Roanoke, Virginia, and they in turn moved from there. They moved inland, and they moved to areas what we call West Virginia, Tennessee, which is the Appalachian Mountains, and these people were called Melungeons, which means they are people of mixed race. Some say Elvis Presley, his mother was Melungeon. Some say the wife of Abraham Lincoln, who was the president, to launch the Emancipation Proclamation, that his wife was a Melungeon. And she therefore, according to what we call in America, if you have one drop, one drop of black blood, you black, And unfortunately, many of those immigrants who come today from, especially India, Pakistan, who are dark-skinned, the darker-skinned ones, if this system had developed to today that we had segregation in America, these people would have suffered segregation because they will be classified as black in America. As many of the Pakistanis, I think one brother told me, he said he used to go down south and he used to have to get in the back because he was dark-skinned, but he was not black American, he was Pakistani. So they in turn supported the civil rights movement, and we'll talk about that further. So we see the history of conversion to Islam in the United States is an ongoing process, a continuous process, and I wish to give you some books to read and finish up with. This is called The Servants of Allah, Muslims Enslaved in America, in the Americas, by Sylvian Diouf. She's a beautiful professor, done scholarly work. She's not an African American. Matter of fact, I think she's from West Africa, but she wrote extensively, and she gives numerous amount of cases of African enslaved in the Americas, and that's one of the reasons why, as part of the Constitution, if we talk about changing the Constitution, it should include many of these individuals that I'm going to mention in the next segment when I talk about slavery in and of itself. So I'd be reminded that we're moving along in the sequence. We're covering now 1619, the enslavement of Africans, and we're going to move from there to the Emancipation Proclamation, its meaning, whether or not it did liberate the slaves, as they said, or whether or not it was a promissory note that was not fulfilled. So the American Revolution was an ideological and political revolution in British America. It began between 1765 and 1791. Blacks were considered uncivilized, personal property, beast of burden, cursed by Ham. And it should be mentioned here that they used the biblical quotes in the Bible to justify the enslavement of African people primarily, because in it says, "Be you forever damned with the curse of Ham." I reject that notion because in Islam we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says illa adla alayh. The whole earth belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we understand that the Prophet ﷺ said, the noblest of you in the eyesight of Allah is not the blacks over the whites or the whites over the black, but the one who has the greatest degree of taqwa. And taqwa or piety is a condition of the heart. So what was the situation there with the so-called colonists? They were against taxation. They were against the British establishing laws upon them, and I will continue in the next segment. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.